The bullet shattered the window of the mercantile just as Isaac Warner ducked behind a wooden barrel, his heart pounding against his ribs while shards of glass rained down like deadly snowflakes across the dusty floorboards of Las Animas, Colorado. It was August 1878, and Isaac had only come into town for supplies, not expecting to walk straight into a robbery that would change the entire trajectory of his life. The outlaws were shouting, their voices raw with desperation and whiskey courage, while inside the general store 3 customers lay flat against the floor, praying the violence would pass them by like a summer storm. Isaac counted 4 shots before silence fell heavy as a wool blanket, broken only by the sound of hoofbeats retreating into the distance and the quiet sobbing of Mrs. Henderson behind the counter. When Isaac finally stood, dusting off his worn denim pants and checking himself for injuries he did not have, he noticed the woman by the book display. She had remained perfectly still throughout the entire ordeal, her hands clutched around a leather-bound volume, her knuckles white as fresh cream. She wore a simple traveling dress the color of autumn wheat, and her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical bun that somehow made her look both severe and beautiful. Her eyes, green as spring grass after rain, met his across the chaos of the disrupted store, and something passed between them, some wordless acknowledgement of survival and shared terror. "You all right, miss?" Isaac asked, moving toward her carefully, his boots crunching on broken glass. His voice came out rougher than intended, still thick with adrenaline. She nodded slowly, then seemed to remember herself and straightened her spine. "Yes, thank you. I am quite well, considering." Her accent carried the refined tones of education, of eastern cities far from this frontier town. "Though I confess this is not the welcome to Las Animas I had anticipated." Isaac found himself almost smiling despite the circumstances. "Well, it is not usually this exciting. Most days we just have dust and heat and the occasional dispute over cattle prices." He extended his hand. "Isaac Warner. I run a small ranch about 5 miles south of town." She took his hand with surprising firmness. "Olivia Gardner. I arrived on the morning stage from Denver. I am to be the new librarian, though at present I am beginning to question the wisdom of that decision." The sheriff arrived then, a barrel-chested man named Tom Crawford, who had held the position for 15 years through Indian raids, drought, and the general lawlessness that plagued this corner of Colorado territory. He took statements from everyone present, his pencil scratching across a worn notebook, while the town doctor checked for injuries. The robbers had made off with perhaps $200 from the till, not a fortune but enough to hurt a small business. Mrs. Henderson was shaken but unharmed, though her husband vowed to keep a shotgun under the counter from that day forward. Isaac stayed with Olivia throughout the questioning, some instinct telling him she needed an anchor in this unfamiliar place. She answered the sheriff's questions with composed precision, describing the men's heights, their clothing, even the particular pattern of mud on one man's boots. Crawford raised his eyebrows at the level of detail, clearly impressed. "You have a good eye for observation, Miss Gardner," the sheriff said. "I have spent many years cataloging books and managing records," Olivia replied. "The skill transfers to other areas, it seems." When the official business concluded, Isaac found himself reluctant to simply walk away. "Do you have lodgings arranged?" "I was to stay at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house until more permanent arrangements could be made," Olivia said. "I have the address here." She produced a carefully folded letter from her reticule. "I know the place. Let me help you with your trunks." Isaac had spotted her luggage outside on the boardwalk, 2 substantial trunks and a smaller case that looked like it might contain books. "That is very kind, but I could not impose. Miss Gardner, You have just survived your first frontier robbery. The least I can do is make sure you get settled somewhere safe." Isaac spoke with a gentle firmness that left little room for argument. She studied him for a long moment, those green eyes assessing him in a way that made Isaac feel oddly exposed. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she nodded. "Very well. Thank you, Mr. Warner." Mrs. Patterson's boarding house stood on a quiet street lined with cottonwood trees, their leaves rustling in the late afternoon breeze. It was a neat two-story building painted white with green shutters, a garden of struggling roses out front fighting against the Colorado heat. Mrs. Patterson herself was a widow of 60 with a kind face and capable hands, and she clucked over Olivia like a hen with a new chick when she heard about the robbery. "Terrible business, just terrible," she said, showing Olivia to a clean room on the second floor with windows facing east. "But you will be safe here, dear. I keep the doors locked at night, and my son checks the premises regularly." Isaac carried up the trunks, setting them down carefully in the corner of the room. The space was simple but comfortable, with an iron bedstead covered in a patchwork quilt, a washstand with a porcelain basin, and a writing desk positioned to catch the morning light. Olivia moved to the window, looking out over the town that would be her new home. "It is smaller than I expected," she said quietly. "Las Animas is not much more than a wide spot in the road," Isaac admitted, coming to stand beside her. "About 300 people on a good day, less when the ranchers are out with their herds, but the folks here are decent mostly. They work hard, look after their own." "And do they value education?" Olivia asked, turning to face him. "I came here because the town council wrote to the Library Association in Boston requesting help to establish a lending library and eventually a school. But seeing the roughness of this place, I wonder if books and learning will matter much to people fighting just to survive." Isaac thought about this carefully before answering. "I will not lie to you, Miss Gardner. Many folks here cannot read much beyond their own names. They are more concerned with water rights and beef prices than literature. But that does not mean they do not want better for their children. I have heard men at the saloon, tough men who have never opened a book in their lives, talk about wanting their sons and daughters to have opportunities they never had. Your work here, it matters. Maybe more than it would back east where there are already plenty of schools and libraries." Something in Olivia's expression softened. "Do you have children, Mr. Warner?" "No, I am not married. My parents passed some years back, and I have been running the ranch alone since then." Isaac felt the familiar ache of loneliness that came with speaking these words. "But I see the need nonetheless. I had a mother who taught me to read, to value learning. Not everyone here has been so fortunate. Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman." "She was. Came out here from Pennsylvania with my father in '58. She died 6 years ago come winter. Influenza." Isaac cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the emotion that tried to surface. "Anyway, I should let you rest. You have had quite a day." Olivia walked him to the door. "Thank you for your help, Mr. Warner. Your kindness has made this difficult introduction to Las Animas considerably more bearable." "Isaac, please. And it was my pleasure, Miss Gardner." "Olivia," she said with a small smile that transformed her serious face into something luminous, "if we are to be informal." Isaac found himself grinning as he headed back down the stairs and out into the dusty street. The sun was lowering toward the mountains in the west, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. He collected his horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Rusty, from the hitching post where he had left him hours earlier, and began the ride back to his ranch. But his thoughts stayed in that clean room with the eastern windows and the woman who had traveled so far to bring books and learning to a rough frontier town. The next morning, Isaac found himself making excuses to return to Las Animas. He needed nails, he told himself, and perhaps some coffee. The fact that these items could have waited another week was something he chose not to examine too closely. The town was bustling with its usual morning activity when he arrived, wagons rumbling past, merchants sweeping their stoops, dogs roaming in packs looking for scraps. He tied Rusty outside Henderson's mercantile, the window already replaced with new glass, and went inside. "Morning, Isaac," Mr. Henderson called from behind the counter. His wife stood beside him, looking considerably more composed than she had the previous day. "What can I do for you?" "Need some nails, and I am running low on coffee," Isaac said, trying to sound casual. "Also wanted to check how you folks are doing after yesterday." "Right as rain," Mrs. Henderson said stoutly, though Isaac noticed her hands trembled slightly as she wrapped his purchases. "Takes more than a few outlaws to keep us down. Sheriff Crawford thinks they headed north toward the Wyoming line. Good riddance, I say." Isaac paid for his items and was about to leave when Mr. Henderson spoke again. "Say, Isaac, you seemed to hit it off with that new librarian lady yesterday." "Miss Gardner, was it?" Isaac felt heat creep up his neck. "We spoke briefly, yes. Well, she came by this morning looking for information about where she might set up her library. The town council promised her space, but you know how disorganized they can be. I suggested she speak with you, actually. You have that old barn on your property that you are not using, do you not?" Isaac did indeed have an old barn, a solid structure his father had built when they first settled the land. It had housed livestock once, but now stood mostly empty since Isaac had built a newer, larger barn closer to the house. "I suppose I do, but what would that have to do with a library?" "She needs somewhere to start her work, somewhere she can organize all those books she brought and begin offering lending services. Eventually, she wants to start a school, but that will require building or finding a larger space. In the meantime, a clean barn might serve her purposes admirably, and your ranch is not so far from town that folks could not reach it." The idea took root in Isaac's mind with surprising speed. The barn was just sitting there, after all, weathering with disuse. And having Olivia on his property, seeing her regularly, helping her with this endeavor that clearly meant so much to her, it appealed to him more than he wanted to admit. "I suppose I could offer the space," he said slowly. "Would need some cleaning and repairs, but the structure is sound." Mrs. Henderson beamed. "I knew you were a good man, Isaac Warner. That poor girl needs all the help she can get, arriving in a new place with such ambitious plans. You go talk to her. I believe she is at the boarding house, planning her next steps." Isaac left the mercantile with his purchases and more than a little trepidation. He was not usually an impulsive man. Ranch life had taught him patience, careful planning, attention to detail. But something about Olivia Gardner had gotten under his skin with remarkable swiftness, and he found himself walking toward Mrs. Patterson's boarding house before he could think better of it. He found Olivia in the parlor, papers spread across a small table, her brow furrowed in concentration. She wore a different dress today, pale blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes, and her hair was arranged in the same practical bun. When she looked up and saw him, surprise flitted across her features, followed by something that might have been pleasure. "Isaac, good morning. I did not expect to see you again so soon." "Morning, Olivia. I heard you were looking for space to set up your library." "Word travels quickly in a small town," she said with a slight smile. "Yes, I have been trying to coordinate with the town council, but they seem to have promised me a building that does not actually exist yet. There is talk of constructing something suitable, but that could take months or even years. In the meantime, I have 3 trunks full of books and no place to properly house them. Isaac took off his hat, turning it in his hands. I might have a solution if you are willing to consider it. I have an old barn on my property, solid structure with 4 walls and a good roof. It would need cleaning and some repairs, but it could work for your purposes, at least temporarily. And it is not so far from town that people could not visit to borrow books or attend lessons once you start teaching. Olivia stood, moving closer to him. You would let me use your barn. But surely you need it for your ranch work. I have another barn I use for livestock and equipment. This one is just sitting empty. Seems a shame to let it go to waste when it could serve the community. Isaac met her eyes steadily. And I believe in what you are trying to do here. Education matters, especially on the frontier where ignorance can be as dangerous as any outlaw. That is remarkably generous of you. Olivia's voice had gone soft. I confess I was beginning to feel quite discouraged. Everything I had been promised seemed to be evaporating, and I was starting to wonder if I had made a terrible mistake in coming here. You have not made a mistake, Isaac said firmly. This town needs someone like you. It just needs some time to recognize that fact. Olivia studied him for a long moment, and Isaac had the sense of being evaluated again, measured against some internal standard. Would you show me this barn? I should like to see it before making any decisions. Of course. I have my horse outside. I could saddle one of Mrs. Patterson's horses for you, or we could take a wagon if you prefer. I can ride, Olivia said. Give me a moment to change into something more suitable. She returned 20 minutes later wearing a practical riding skirt and jacket, her hair now in a long braid down her back. She moved with easy confidence as they went to the small stable behind the boarding house, where Mrs. Patterson kept 2 horses for the use of her boarders. Isaac saddled a gentle mare named Daisy, and soon they were riding south out of town, the morning sun warm on their shoulders. The land around Las Animas was high desert country, dotted with sagebrush and juniper, the Arkansas River running like a lifeline through the valley. The mountains rose blue and distant to the west, their peaks still holding snow even in late summer. Isaac pointed out landmarks as they rode, the old cottonwood where rustlers had been hanged 5 years back, the creek that ran year-round even in drought, the distant smoke from the Robertson Ranch where 5 brothers worked a cattle operation. It is beautiful in its own way, Olivia said, her eyes scanning the landscape. Harsh but honest, there is no pretense here. That is the truth of it, Isaac agreed. The land does not lie, it gives back what you put into it, no more and no less. A man can make a good life here if he is willing to work hard and accept that nature will always have the upper hand. They reached Isaac's property after about 40 minutes of steady riding. The house was a modest structure of hewn logs, single-story but well-built, with a covered porch running along the front. Nearby stood the newer barn Isaac had mentioned, and beyond it, set back about 100 yards, was the older building. It was smaller than the new barn, constructed of weathered wood and river stone, with high windows that would let in good light. That is it, Isaac said, dismounting and helping Olivia down from her horse. Like I said, it needs work, but I think it has potential. They walked over together and Isaac pulled open the heavy door. Inside, the space was dim and dusty, smelling of old hay and earth. But it was dry, the roof showing no signs of leaks, and the structure felt solid. The main room was perhaps 30 feet by 40 feet, with a loft above that could be accessed by a wooden ladder. Small animals had nested in corners, and years of dust covered everything, but beneath the neglect, Olivia could see the bones of something useful. The windows would need cleaning, she said, moving through the space with growing excitement. And we would need shelving, tables, chairs. But yes, I can see it. Over there could be the lending library, books organized by category. And this open area could serve for lessons once I have enough students. The loft could be used for storage or perhaps a quiet reading space. Isaac found himself grinning at her enthusiasm. I can build the shelves and tables. I am decent with woodwork. And I know several men in town who would help with the cleaning and repairs if we asked. Once word gets out that this is for the school, folks will want to contribute. You think so? Olivia turned to face him, her expression hopeful and uncertain. I know so. People here might be rough around the edges, but they understand the value of pulling together for something good. Give them a clear project and a way to help, and they will show up. They spent the next hour walking the property, Isaac explaining his vision for repairs while Olivia added her own ideas. They would need to shore up some of the foundations, replace a few boards, add more windows for better light. Isaac had paint stored in his equipment shed that they could use to freshen the interior. Olivia wanted a small stove installed so the space could be heated in winter when temperatures dropped below freezing. They discussed costs and timelines, practicalities and dreams, and somewhere in the middle of planning, Isaac realized how much he enjoyed simply talking with her. She was sharp-minded and practical, but there was passion beneath her controlled exterior. When she spoke about education, about giving children access to books and knowledge, her whole face came alive. She told him about working in a library in Boston, about the immigrants who came in looking for information about citizenship and jobs, about the children who discovered whole new worlds in the pages of novels and history books. "Books saved me," she said quietly as they sat on a fallen log outside the barn, sharing the canteen of water Isaac had brought. "My father died when I was 12. We had very little money, and my mother worked as a seamstress to keep us fed. But I could go to the public library, and there I could travel to any place, any time. I could be anyone. It gave me hope when everything felt hopeless. That is what I want to give to the children here. Hope and the tools to build better lives." Isaac felt something shift in his chest, a recognition of kindred spirits. "My mother used to read to me every night when I was young. Even when we first came out here and life was hard, she made time for that. She said a person without books was like a bird without wings, stuck on the ground when they were meant to soar." "I like that," Olivia said softly. "Your mother sounds like she and I would have gotten along well. She would have liked you very much." They rode back to town in companionable silence, the sun now high overhead, the heat pressing down like a physical weight. When they reached Mrs. Patterson's boarding house, Isaac helped Olivia dismount, his hands lingering on her waist perhaps a moment longer than strictly necessary. "Thank you for today," Olivia said. "For the barn, for your help, for understanding what I am trying to do here." "It is my pleasure," Isaac said honestly. "I will start on the repairs tomorrow. With some luck and hard work, we should have your library ready to open in a few weeks." "We?" Olivia raised an eyebrow, a teasing light in her eyes. "Well, I cannot let you do this alone. What kind of neighbor would I be? A typical one, I suspect. Most people would offer kind words and little else." She grew serious. "But you are different, Isaac Warner. I see that already." Isaac felt that flush creeping up his neck again. "Just trying to do right by my community. It is more than that, and you know it." Olivia smiled, and Isaac felt his heart kick against his ribs. "I shall see you tomorrow, then. Shall I ride out to help with the work, if you like? I start early to beat the worst of the heat, around dawn. Then I shall be there at dawn." Olivia extended her hand, and Isaac shook it, feeling the warmth of her skin against his, the firmness of her grip. She held on for a moment longer than necessary, her eyes searching his face. "I am glad fate brought us together in that mercantile yesterday, even under such frightening circumstances. "So am I," Isaac said quietly. "So am I." The next morning, true to her word, Olivia arrived at the ranch just as the sun was breaking over the eastern horizon, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Isaac had already been awake for an hour, tending to his animals and gathering tools for the day's work. He heard the horse approaching and walked out to meet her, catching Daisy's reins as Olivia dismounted with practiced ease. "You are punctual," he said with approval. "My mother always said that being late showed disrespect for other people's time. It is a habit I have never broken." Olivia wore working clothes today, a simple dress of sturdy fabric with an apron tied over it, and she had wrapped a scarf around her hair. She looked ready for hard labor, and Isaac felt a surge of respect for her practical nature. "Well then, let us get to it. Fair warning, the first few hours are going to be mostly cleaning. Years of dust and debris will not remove themselves." They worked through the morning, sweeping and scrubbing, carrying out old hay and the remains of animal nests, opening windows to let in fresh air and light. It was hard, dirty work, and more than once Isaac suggested Olivia could take a break, but she refused, attacking each task with determined energy. They talked as they worked, sharing stories of their lives, their histories, their hopes. Isaac learned that Olivia was 24 years old, that she had never been engaged though she had received several proposals, that she loved poetry and could recite entire passages from Whitman and Dickinson. She learned that he was 27, that he had briefly considered becoming a lawyer before his parents' move west changed everything, that he played harmonica and sometimes sang to his cattle on long nights. Around midday, they stopped for lunch. Isaac had brought bread and cheese and cold chicken from his larder, and they ate sitting on the porch of his house, looking out over the land he had worked so hard to maintain. "You ever get lonely out here?" Olivia asked, breaking the comfortable silence. No family nearby, the town 5 miles distant. Isaac considered this. "Sometimes, yes. There are nights when the silence feels too heavy, when I would give much for someone to talk to share a meal with. But mostly I am too busy to dwell on it. A ranch requires constant attention, especially when you are working it alone. There is always something that needs doing. It must be difficult, managing everything by yourself. I hire help during roundup and branding season. There are a few hands who work for several ranchers in the area, moving from property to property as needed. But day to day, yes, it is just me. And I confess there are times when I wonder if I should have sold out and moved to Denver or even back east, but this land is in my blood now. It belonged to my parents, holds their memory. I cannot quite bring myself to let it go." Olivia nodded slowly. "I understand that kind of connection. There was a corner of the Boston Library, up on the 3rd floor near the history section, where I spent countless hours. It was just a small alcove with a window overlooking the street, but it was my place, my sanctuary. Leaving it was harder than leaving my apartment or even the city itself." "Do you regret coming here?" She looked at him directly, those green eyes serious. "No, I needed a change, a challenge. Boston was comfortable, but I was stagnating there. Here, I can build something from nothing, make a real difference. That matters more than comfort." The afternoon was spent on repairs. Isaac showed Olivia how to hammer nails straight, how to measure and cut boards for shelving, how to mix the paint until the consistency was right. She proved an apt student, quick to learn and unafraid to try new things even when she failed on the first attempt. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side, their movements gradually synchronizing until they barely needed to speak to coordinate their efforts. As the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the barn floor now clean and swept, Isaac stepped back to survey their progress. "We did well today. Another week or two of this and you will have a proper library." "We did well," Olivia agreed, wiping dust from her face with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of paint across her cheek. "I had forgotten how satisfying physical labor can be. In Boston, my work was all mental, organizational. This is different. You can see the results of your effort immediately." "You have paint on your face," Isaac said, reaching out instinctively to brush it away. His thumb grazed her cheekbone, and suddenly they were very close, close enough that he could see the darker ring of green around the iris of her eyes, could smell the scent of lavender soap beneath the honest sweat of hard work. Time seemed to suspend, the world narrowing to just the two of them in the golden light of late afternoon. Olivia did not pull away. Instead, she leaned almost imperceptibly closer, her breath catching audibly. "Isaac," she whispered, and his name on her lips felt like both a question and an answer. He might have kissed her then. Part of him desperately wanted to. But something held him back, some awareness that this was too soon, too fast, that whatever was building between them deserved more care than a rushed kiss in a dusty barn. So instead, he smiled and stepped back, his hand falling away from her face. "We should get you back to town before dark," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "The road is not dangerous, but I would prefer not to test that assumption." Olivia blinked, and Isaac saw confusion and perhaps disappointment flash across her features before she schooled them back to neutrality. "Yes, of course. You are right." They rode back to Las Animas in silence, but it was not the companionable quiet of the morning. Something had shifted between them, some line crossed and then uncrossed, leaving awkwardness in its wake. When they reached the boarding house, Olivia dismounted quickly, barely waiting for Isaac's assistance. "Thank you for today," she said formally, not quite meeting his eyes. "Same time tomorrow." "Yes, tomorrow." Isaac watched her hurry up the steps and into the house and cursed himself for a coward. He should have kissed her, or he should not have touched her face at all. But this middle ground, this retreat after advancing, was the worst of all options. He rode home slowly, the evening star already visible in the darkening sky, and wondered how he had managed to complicate things so quickly. But beneath the self-recrimination was something else, something warm and persistent. She had leaned toward him. She had whispered his name. She felt this pull between them too. And that knowledge, despite the awkwardness of the moment, filled Isaac with a hope he had not felt in years. The next morning, Isaac worried that Olivia might not show up, that he had frightened her off with his forwardness. But as dawn broke, he heard hoofbeats approaching, and there she was, arriving precisely on time, her expression determinedly cheerful. "Good morning," she called out, dismounting before he could reach her. "Shall we pick up where we left off?" They did not speak about the moment in the barn, and Isaac followed her lead, keeping things light and focused on the work. But he caught her watching him when she thought he was not looking, and once, when their hands accidentally brushed reaching for the same tool, they both pulled back as if burned. The awareness between them was a living thing now, impossible to ignore even as they tried to pretend otherwise. More people from town began to arrive as word spread about the library project. First came Marcus Robertson, one of the 5 brothers from the cattle ranch, with a wagon full of lumber he said was just sitting around unused. Then came old Mr. Chen, who ran the Chinese laundry on the edge of town, with his adult son Peter. They spent a day installing the stove Olivia wanted, running pipe through the roof, making sure everything was safe and up to code. Mrs. Henderson sent over curtains she had sewn, cheerful yellow fabric that brightened the windows. The blacksmith, a giant of a man named Thomas Wright, forged iron brackets for the shelves at no charge, saying he was happy to contribute to such a worthy cause. Olivia was clearly moved by the community's response. Isaac watched her eyes shine with unshed tears as person after person arrived to help, offering time and materials and words of encouragement. She thanked each of them profusely, sometimes taking their hands in hers, sometimes just nodding because her voice was too thick with emotion to speak. "You were right," she said to Isaac one evening as they watched the sunset from the barn door, now properly hung and fitted with a lock. "They do care, they do want this. I told you," Isaac said gently. "You just had to give them something concrete to support. No, it is more than that." Olivia turned to face him. "They are doing this as much for you as for the library. They trust you, respect you. When you throw your weight behind something, they follow. You have real standing in this community, Isaac. I hope you know that." Isaac felt uncomfortable with the praise. "I just do what needs doing." "Exactly, and that is why people listen to you." Olivia hesitated, then reached out and touched his arm lightly. "I never properly thanked you for all of this, for offering the barn, for working so hard to make it suitable, for convincing others to help. I could not have done this without you." "You could have," Isaac said firmly. "It might have taken longer, been more difficult, but you would have found a way. You have that kind of determination. Perhaps, but it would have been a much lonelier endeavor." Her hand was still on his arm, warm through the fabric of his shirt. "I am glad I do not have to do it alone." They stood like that for a long moment, the last rays of sunlight painting everything in shades of amber and rose, the sounds of evening birds beginning their songs. Isaac covered her hand with his own, a simple gesture that felt monumental, and this time when he met her eyes, he did not look away. "Olivia, I need to be honest with you about something." "What is it?" Her voice was soft, cautious. "That day when I almost kissed you, when I touched your face and then pulled back like a fool, I have been kicking myself ever since. Not because I regret pulling back, but because I think I handled it poorly. I did not want to rush things, did not want to take advantage when we barely know each other, but I also did not want to leave you confused about my intentions." "And what are your intentions, Isaac?" Olivia's tone was steady, but he could see the rapid rise and fall of her breath. "To court you properly, if you will allow it. To spend time with you, not just working on this project, but truly getting to know you. To see if this connection I feel between us is real and lasting, or just the result of proximity and shared purpose." Isaac spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. "I know you came here for a fresh start, for your work, not to find a husband, and I will respect whatever boundaries you set. But I would be lying if I said I did not hope for more between us." Olivia was quiet for so long that Isaac began to fear he had miscalculated badly. But then a slow smile spread across her face, transforming her serious features into something radiant. "Isaac Warner, I thought you were never going to say anything. Yes, I would very much like for you to court me. In fact, I have been hoping you would ask since approximately the second day of our acquaintance." Relief and joy flooded through Isaac in equal measure. "You have. Did you think I came out here at dawn every day just for the pleasure of manual labor? I can wield a hammer and paint brush, certainly, but my true motivation has been spending time with you." She laughed, a bright sound that Isaac wanted to bottle and keep forever. "You are not the only one feeling this connection." Isaac grinned, suddenly feeling lighter than he had in years. "Well then, Miss Gardner, might I have the pleasure of your company at dinner tomorrow evening? There is a restaurant in town, modest but clean, where we could have a proper meal together." "I would be delighted, Mr. Warner." They stood there smiling at each other like fools until full dark fell and Isaac had to insist on escorting Olivia back to town. But this time, the ride was filled with conversation and laughter, with stories and questions, with the easy comfort of two people who have acknowledged their feelings and found them reciprocated. When they reached the boarding house, Isaac dismounted and helped Olivia down, and this time when his hand circled her waist, she did not hurry away. "Thank you for being honest with me," she said quietly. "I know it is not easy for men to speak about feelings. At least, that is what all the novels tell me." "Novels are probably right about that," Isaac admitted, "but I have learned that most regrets come from things left unsaid rather than things spoken. I did not want to look back years from now and wonder what might have been if I had just found the courage to tell you how I felt." "Then, we are both brave today," Olivia said. She rose up on her toes and kissed his cheek quickly, a feather-light touch that still managed to send warmth flooding through him. Then she was gone, slipping through the door with one last smile over her shoulder, leaving Isaac standing in the street like a lovesick boy. Over the following weeks, the barn transformed into a proper library. The shelves Isaac built lined the walls, sturdy and well-crafted, waiting to be filled. Olivia spent days unpacking her trunks, sorting books by category, creating a system for lending. She had brought an impressive collection with her from Boston, everything from primers for beginning readers to advanced texts on science and philosophy, from classic literature to contemporary novels, from histories to poetry collections. She created a lending log where borrowers could sign out books, establishing rules about return times and care of materials. And through it all, Isaac courted her with old-fashioned deliberateness. They had dinner at the restaurant, where he learned she loved apple pie and disliked coffee, but would drink tea by the gallon if available. They attended a barn dance at the Robertson Ranch, where Isaac discovered Olivia could dance beautifully despite claiming to be rusty, and where half the town saw them together and began speculating about wedding dates. They took long rides through the countryside, Isaac showing her hidden corners of the land he loved, Olivia sharing observations about plants and geological formations that revealed her educated mind. They talked about everything and nothing. She told him about growing up poor in Boston, about her brilliant father who had been a professor before he died, about her mother who had sacrificed everything to give Olivia an education. He told her about the harsh early years on the ranch, about watching his father break his back trying to tame wild land, about his mother's slow decline from illness and his own guilt at being unable to save her. They shared their dreams, their fears, their hopes for the future. And slowly, carefully, they built something neither of them had quite expected to find. Trust, yes, and respect, but also a deep affection that grew stronger with each passing day, each shared moment. Isaac found himself thinking about Olivia at odd times, while feeding his cattle or mending fence, her laugh echoing in his memory. Olivia caught herself looking toward the door of the library, hoping for Isaac's arrival, feeling incomplete when a day passed without seeing him. Finally, 3 weeks after the conversation that had changed everything, the library was ready to open. Olivia had created invitations, hand-lettered announcements that Isaac helped her post around town. The whole community was invited to an opening celebration, with refreshments and a tour of the facility and the opportunity to sign up for lending privileges. Olivia was nervous, worrying that no one would come, that all this work would prove to be for nothing. But Isaac knew better. He had seen the excitement in people's eyes when they talked about the library, the pride that Las Animas was getting something so refined, so civilized. And on the day of the opening, his faith was rewarded. By mid-morning, wagons and horses filled the area around the barn, families arriving in their Sunday best, children running wild with excitement, adults talking eagerly about this new resource. Olivia stood at the door in a dress of deep green that matched her eyes, her hair arranged in an elegant style that must have taken hours. She greeted each arrival personally, shaking hands, thanking people for coming, glowing with happiness that made her beautiful. Isaac stayed close, offering support, helping manage the crowd, introducing Olivia to people she had not yet met. Sheriff Crawford arrived with his wife, a schoolteacher from Denver who had retired when they married. She spent an hour talking with Olivia about education theory and teaching methods, offering to help once Olivia started formal lessons. Marcus Robertson brought his youngest brother, barely 18, who was learning to read and wanted books that could help him improve. Mrs. Henderson came with a donation of more books, volumes she had been storing in her attic for years. Even old Mr. Chen arrived, though he could not read English, and spent the afternoon helping organize the children and keep them from running wild. As the day progressed, Olivia moved through the library, showing people the different sections, explaining the lending system, answering questions about when she might start teaching classes. Her passion was evident in every word, every gesture, and Isaac watched the townspeople respond to it, their initial curiosity blooming into genuine enthusiasm. By the end of the day, 35 people had signed up for lending privileges, and a waiting list was forming for the first round of lessons Olivia planned to offer. As the sun began to set and the last visitors departed, Olivia sank down onto one of the benches Isaac had built, looking exhausted but triumphant. "We did it," she whispered. "It is really happening." Isaac sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You did it. This was your dream, your vision." "Our dream," Olivia corrected. "This library exists because of you as much as because of me. The building, the community support, even my courage to keep pushing forward when things seemed impossible, all of that came from you." She turned to face him, and Isaac saw tears streaming down her cheeks, tears of joy and relief and overwhelming emotion. "I do not have the words to thank you properly." "Then do not try," Isaac said softly, reaching up to brush away her tears with his thumb. "Just know that helping you with this has been one of the most meaningful things I have ever done. Watching you bring light and knowledge to this rough place, seeing people respond to your passion and dedication, it has reminded me why I stayed here, why this land and these people matter." "I love you," Olivia whispered, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess them. "I know it is too soon, that we have only known each other a few weeks, but I cannot keep it inside anymore. I love you, Isaac Warner." Isaac felt his heart expand until it seemed too large for his chest. "I love you too. Have loved you, I think, since that first day in the Mercantile when you stood there holding that book like it was the most important thing in the world. You are brilliant and brave and stubborn, and everything I never knew I was looking for." He kissed her then, properly this time, no pulling back or second-guessing. Her lips were soft beneath his, tasting of tears and the lemonade they had served at the opening. She made a small sound and leaned into him, her hands coming up to grip his shirt, and Isaac wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, pouring every ounce of feeling into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "I know it is fast, probably too fast by every standard of propriety, but I am certain, Olivia, certain that I want to spend my life with you, supporting your dreams, building a future together. Marry me." Olivia laughed and cried at the same time. "Yes, yes, of course, yes. I came west looking for purpose and found so much more, found home, found love, found you." They sat there as the last light faded, wrapped in each other's arms, making plans and promises. They would marry as soon as arrangements could be made, perhaps in another month. Olivia would continue her library work, and Isaac would support her fully, helping expand the lending program and eventually building a proper schoolhouse when funds allowed. They would live at the ranch but keep the library open regular hours. They would build a life together that honored both their dreams. When Isaac finally escorted Olivia back to town that night, riding slowly under a sky full of stars, he felt a contentment he had never experienced before. The future stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise, and he could not wait to meet it with Olivia by his side. The weeks leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of activity. Olivia continued offering lending services at the library 3 days a week, and had begun teaching basic reading and writing 2 evenings a week to adults who wanted to improve their skills. Isaac helped her in the evenings while managing his ranch during the day, often working until full dark to keep up with everything. But he would not have changed a thing. Watching Olivia teach, seeing her patience with struggling students, her joy when someone successfully read a sentence for the first time, made every long day worth it. They planned a simple wedding, to be held at the small church in Las Animas. Olivia had no family who could travel out for the ceremony, her mother having passed just before Olivia made the decision to move west. Isaac had no family either, both his parents dead and no siblings to speak of, but they did not need blood relatives. The community of Las Animas had adopted them both, and the church would be full of friends and well-wishers. Mrs. Patterson took charge of organizing the reception, recruiting half the women in town to contribute food. Mrs. Henderson sewed Olivia's wedding dress, a beautiful creation of ivory silk that had been stored in her attic for years, brought from the East and never used. Sheriff Crawford agreed to give Olivia away, since she had no father to do so. Marcus Robertson and his brothers offered to provide music for the reception, all of them surprisingly talented on various instruments. As the wedding day approached, Isaac found himself both eager and nervous. Eager to make Olivia his wife, to start their life together officially. But nervous too, worried he would not be enough for her, that this educated, refined woman would eventually regret marrying a simple rancher. He confessed these fears to Olivia one evening as they sat on his porch watching the sunset, and she turned to him with fierce intensity. "Isaac Warner, you listen to me. I did not fall in love with you despite who you are. I fell in love with you because of who you are. Your kindness, your strength, your willingness to work hard for something you believe in. You are not simple, you are genuine. And that is rarer and more valuable than any amount of formal education or city polish." She took his face in her hands. "I choose you. Every day for the rest of my life I choose you. Never doubt that." Her words settled something inside him, quieted the anxious voice that questioned his worthiness. And when the wedding day arrived, bright and clear in early October, Isaac stood at the front of the church with absolute certainty that he was making the right choice. Olivia walked down the aisle on Sheriff Crawford's arm, beautiful beyond words in her ivory dress, her auburn hair swept up with small white flowers tucked into the arrangement. Her eyes locked on Isaac's as she approached, and he saw his own emotions reflected their love, joy, a touch of disbelief that they had found each other against all odds. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, the words of the traditional vows taking on new weight and meaning as they spoke them to each other. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac kissed Olivia with tenderness and promise, and the church erupted in applause and cheers. They walked back down the aisle together, hands clasped, faces glowing, ready to face whatever the future held as partners and equals. The reception was held in the churchyard, tables laden with food, lanterns strung between trees as evening approached. People danced and talked and celebrated, and Isaac and Olivia moved through it all in a haze of happiness. They cut the cake, fed each other bites while everyone laughed at their mock formality. They danced together, Isaac's arm around Olivia's waist, her head resting against his shoulder, moving slowly to the music the Robertson brothers played. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, calling out congratulations and well wishes, Isaac and Olivia climbed into the wagon he had decorated with ribbons and bells. They would spend their first night as husband and wife at the ranch house, the place that was now their shared home. And as they drove away from town, Olivia's hand in his, Isaac felt a completeness he had never experienced before. His life, which had felt so empty just months before, was now full to overflowing. The transition to married life was surprisingly smooth. Olivia moved her belongings to the ranch, filling the house with her presence, her books, her little touches that made it feel like a home rather than just a place Isaac slept between work days. She continued her library work, and Isaac helped her establish a regular schedule, driving her into town on the days she needed to be there, sometimes staying to help, sometimes returning to tend the ranch and picking her up in the evening. The library grew more popular as word spread. People from other small towns in the area began visiting, some riding for hours to access books they otherwise would never see. Olivia's teaching classes expanded, split into groups for children and adults, basic and advanced levels. She was tireless in her dedication, spending hours preparing lessons, finding materials that would engage her students, offering encouragement to those who struggled. And Isaac supported her in every way he could. He built more shelves as the collection grew, donated money for supplies, helped students with practical applications of their learning. He also began attending the adult evening classes himself, not because he needed help with reading, but because he wanted to improve his writing and learn about subjects his mother had never had the chance to teach him. Sitting in those classes, watching Olivia teach with such passion and skill, made him fall in love with her all over again. Winter came to Las Animas, bringing snow and bitter cold. The library was harder to access during the worst weather, but Olivia was determined to keep it open as much as possible. Isaac worried about her making the journey, but she refused to cancel classes unless conditions were truly dangerous. So he made sure the wagon was ready, the horses strong, the route as clear as possible. And on the evenings when teaching ran late, when they drove home through darkness and snow, wrapped in blankets with only the sound of horse hooves and jingling harness bells, Isaac felt a peace he had never known before. Spring arrived slowly, the snow melting in fits and starts, revealing brown grass that would eventually turn green. And with spring came news that made both Isaac and Olivia ecstatic. Olivia was pregnant, expecting their first child in early autumn. She told Isaac one morning at breakfast, her eyes nervous and excited, and he whooped with joy so loudly it scared the horses in the barn. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around despite her laughing protests, already imagining a child with Olivia's green eyes and his stubbornness. They made plans immediately. Isaac would add a room to the house for the baby. Olivia would continue her library work as long as she felt able, but they would need to find someone to help manage things once the baby arrived. The community rallied again, offering advice and hand-me-down baby clothes and promises of support. Mrs. Patterson volunteered to come stay for a few weeks after the birth to help with cooking and cleaning. Mrs. Henderson began sewing a layette, tiny gowns and blankets in soft cotton. As Olivia's pregnancy progressed, Isaac found himself overwhelmed with protective instincts. He wanted to wrap her in wool and keep her safe from any possible harm, though she gently but firmly reminded him that women had been having babies since the dawn of time, and she was perfectly capable of managing normal activities. Still, he insisted on driving her everywhere, carrying anything heavier than a book, and generally hovering until she threatened to ban him from the library if he did not give her space to breathe. The summer was hot and long, and Olivia grew large with child, moving more slowly but never complaining. She taught right up until a week before the baby was born, determined to finish the term she had started. Her students gave her a gift at the last class, a beautifully bound blank journal where she could record the baby's milestones. And Olivia cried tears of gratitude and hormones and love for these rough frontier people who had become her family. The baby came on a cool September evening after a labor that lasted through the night and into the following day. Isaac stayed by Olivia's side the entire time, holding her hand, offering water and encouragement, terrified by her pain but awed by her strength. When the baby finally arrived, a healthy boy with a strong set of lungs and a shock of dark hair, Isaac wept openly, overwhelmed by the miracle of this new life. They named him Daniel, after Olivia's father, with the middle name James for Isaac's father. Little Daniel Warner came into the world squalling and red-faced, and both his parents fell instantly and completely in love. Isaac held his son with trembling hands, marveling at the tiny fingers that wrapped around his thumb, the perfect little features, the absolute trust in those unfocused newborn eyes. "We made this," he whispered to Olivia as she rested against the pillows, exhausted but glowing. "This perfect little person." "We did," Olivia agreed softly. "And we will teach him to be strong and kind, to value knowledge and hard work, to care about his community. He will grow up with books and horses, learning and nature, the best of both our worlds." The weeks after Daniel's birth were a blur of sleepless nights and constant feedings, of learning how to care for this tiny dependent life. But they managed, supporting each other through the difficult moments, celebrating the small victories. And slowly, they found their new rhythm as a family of three. Mrs. Henderson's oldest daughter, a capable young woman named Sarah, took over the daily management of the library, opening 3 days a week and teaching the basic classes. Olivia visited when she could, bringing Daniel with her, teaching the more advanced classes occasionally. But mostly she stayed at the ranch those first months, healing from the birth, bonding with her son, settling into motherhood. Isaac watched her with Daniel and fell even more deeply in love. She was a natural mother, patient and tender, but also practical, understanding that babies needed routine and boundaries as much as affection. She sang to Daniel as she nursed him, old lullabies from her childhood mixed with poems set to made-up melodies. She read to him even though he was far too young to understand, wanting him to hear the rhythm of language from the earliest age. And Isaac did his part, walking the floor with Daniel when he was fussy, changing diapers with fumbling but determined hands, taking night feedings when they switched to bottles so Olivia could sleep. He had never imagined himself as a father, had barely let himself hope for a family. But now that he had one, he could not imagine life any other way. As Daniel grew from newborn to infant to baby, his personality began to emerge. He was curious and active, reaching for everything, putting anything he could grasp into his mouth. He loved being outside, calming immediately when Isaac carried him around the ranch, showing him horses and cattle and chickens. He loved music, bouncing in his mother's arms when she sang, giggling at his father's harmonica playing, and he loved books. From the time he could sit up, Daniel would pull books off shelves, opening them and studying the pages with solemn concentration. as if he could decode the mysterious symbols through sheer willpower. Olivia would sit with him for hours, showing him pictures, reading stories, encouraging his early interest in the written word. "He will be a scholar," she predicted one evening as they watched Daniel, now almost a year old, carefully turning pages in a picture book. "Look at that focus." "Or a rancher who raids," Isaac countered with a smile. "He could be both. The world is changing, Olivia. Education and practical skills do not have to be separate anymore." "You are right," Olivia agreed, "and we will make sure he has every opportunity to be whatever he wants to be." Time passed with the strange speed of parenthood, days feeling endless but months flying by. Daniel learned to walk, to talk, to run wild around the ranch with the dogs Isaac kept. The library continued to grow and flourish, becoming a true center of learning for the community. Sarah proved to be an excellent teacher in her own right, and eventually, Olivia hired her formally as an assistant librarian, paying her a small salary from the donations the library received. The town council, impressed by the library's success and the community support it generated, finally came through with their original promise. They would build a proper schoolhouse, a one-room building in town that could accommodate 30 students. It would take a year to raise funds and complete construction, but once finished, Olivia would be the head teacher, with Sarah assisting. The library would move to a small room attached to the school, and the barn at the ranch could return to agricultural use. Except Isaac and Olivia had other plans for that barn. By now, it held too many memories, too much significance. So they decided to keep it as a community space, a place where adults could continue evening classes, where meetings could be held, where the growing collection of books that did not fit in the school library could be housed. It would be a gift to the community, free to use with the understanding that people would maintain and respect it. The schoolhouse was completed in the spring of 1881, 3 years after Olivia had first arrived in Los Animas. The opening ceremony was even bigger than the library opening had been, with the territorial governor traveling down from Denver to cut the ribbon and give a speech about the importance of education on the frontier. Olivia stood on the steps of the new building, Daniel in her arms, Isaac beside her, and felt a sense of accomplishment that dwarfed anything she had felt working in the Boston Library. This was hers. She had built this, with Isaac's help and the community's support, but it had started with her vision and her determination. Children who would have grown up illiterate would now have the chance to read and write. Adults who had been trapped by their lack of education could now better themselves. And it all traced back to a frightened woman stepping off a stagecoach, clutching a book during a robbery, meeting a cowboy with kind eyes and a generous heart. She turned to Isaac, who was applauding with the rest of the crowd, Daniel bouncing in his arms and clapping his chubby toddler hands in imitation of the adults. "Thank you," she said, loud enough to be heard over the noise. Isaac looked at her, confused. "For what?" "For believing in me when I had just arrived and had no proof I could do any of this. For offering help without expectation of reward. For working beside me, supporting me, encouraging me when I doubted." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "You taught me the greatest lesson, Isaac. That I was not alone. That I did not have to face challenges by myself. That accepting help was not weakness but wisdom. You showed me what partnership truly means." Isaac shifted Daniel to one arm and pulled Olivia close with the other. "You are the one who brought light to this place, Olivia. I just provided a barn and some carpentry. The vision, the passion, the dedication, that was all you." "No," Olivia said firmly, pulling back to look him in the eye. "It was us, together. Neither of us could have done this alone, and that is what I will teach our children and my students." that the greatest achievements come from working together, from recognizing our own limitations and accepting the strengths of others. You taught me that, and it changed my life. Isaac kissed her forehead, his heart full beyond measure. Then we taught each other, he said. Because you showed me that a man's worth is not measured by how much he can do alone, but by how much good he can create with the right partner. We are better together. They stood like that, a family unit, as the ceremony continued around them. The governor finished his speech. The ribbon was cut. Children poured into the new schoolhouse, exclaiming over the desks and chalkboards, the shelves of books, the maps on the walls. And Isaac and Olivia watched it all with quiet satisfaction, knowing they had built something that would outlast them, that would benefit generations to come. The years that followed were full and rich. Olivia taught during the school year, managed the library year-round, and gave birth to 2 more children, a daughter named Emily in 1883 and another son named Robert in 1886. The school expanded, eventually requiring a second teacher, and Sarah moved into that role permanently. The library collection grew to over 2,000 volumes, making it one of the finest in rural Colorado. Isaac's ranch prospered, benefiting from his hard work and good management. He hired permanent hands as the operation grew, good men who shared his values and work ethic. He became a leader in the community, serving on the town council, helping mediate disputes, using his respect and influence to push for improvements and progress. And through it all, he remained Olivia's greatest supporter, her partner in every sense of the word. They grew older together, silver threading through their hair, lines appearing around their eyes from years of squinting into the sun and laughing at their children's antics. Daniel grew into a serious young man with his mother's love of learning and his father's practical nature. He attended college in Denver, studying agriculture and planning to return to modernize the ranch. Emily was spirited and creative, writing stories and poems, dreaming of becoming a novelist. Robert was still young, but already showing signs of inheriting the best qualities of both his parents. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Olivia back to the barn where they had first admitted their feelings for each other. It was still used for community events, still held books and memories, but tonight it was empty except for the 2 of them. He had brought a blanket and a picnic basket, and they sat together in the space they had created, remembering. "Did you ever imagine that first day we met that we would end up here?" Olivia asked, leaning against his shoulder. "Honestly, no. I thought you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen and completely out of my reach. I never expected you to give a simple rancher the time of day." Isaac wrapped his arm around her. "But I am grateful every day that you saw something in me worth knowing. I saw a good man offering help to a stranger for no reason other than kindness," Olivia said. "And I saw someone who believed in my dreams when they were just ideas without form. You gave me the foundation I needed to build something meaningful." "We gave each other that," Isaac corrected gently. "You taught me that life was not meant to be lived in isolation, that opening my heart to another person would not diminish me but expand me. Before you, I was just existing, going through motions. After you, I was truly living." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the evening, the crickets and night birds, the distant lowing of cattle. Outside, the land they loved stretched in all directions, wild and beautiful and demanding. Above, stars were beginning to appear, pinpricks of light in the darkening sky. "I love you," Olivia said softly. "More now than even on our wedding day, if that is possible." "It is possible," Isaac assured her, "because love is not static. It grows and changes and deepens with time, with shared experiences, with weathering storms together. I love you more than words can express, Olivia Warner. You made my life everything I never knew it could be." They stayed there until full dark, wrapped in each other and memories and contentment. And when they finally returned to the ranch house, where their children were already asleep and the lamps glowed warm welcome, they walked hand in hand, partners in all things, grateful beyond measure for the chance meeting during a robbery that had changed both their lives forever. The years continued to pass, bringing the changes and challenges that all lives hold. There were difficult times, droughts that stressed the ranch, illnesses that tested the family, conflicts in the community that required careful navigation. But Isaac and Olivia faced everything together, their bond deepening with each obstacle overcome. Daniel graduated from college and returned home, full of ideas for improving the ranch. Isaac worked with him to implement new techniques, learning from his son even as he shared his own years of hard-won experience. It was a partnership that mirrored what Isaac had with Olivia, built on mutual respect and the understanding that combining different strengths created better results than either person could achieve alone. Emily did pursue writing, publishing her first story in a Denver newspaper when she was just 17. She wrote about life on the frontier, about the people who built communities in harsh places, about her own family's story without explicitly naming them. Her work gained a following, and she began to dream bigger, talking about moving east to New York or Boston to be in the center of the literary world. Olivia supported her daughter's ambitions while quietly missing her already. But she understood the need to chase dreams, having done so herself when she left Boston for Colorado. She helped Emily prepare, shared contacts from her own days working in a major library, encouraged her to be bold. And when Emily left on the train, Olivia cried but also smiled, knowing her daughter was carrying forward the lessons of courage and determination. Robert was still finding his way, trying different interests, from ranching to teaching to working at the general store. Isaac and Olivia gave him space to explore, understanding that not everyone knew their path as early as Daniel had. They trusted he would find his place eventually. Through it all, the school and library continued to thrive. New families moved to Las Animas, drawn by the reputation of the excellent educational opportunities. The town grew from 300 people to nearly 1,000. New businesses opened. A railroad spur was added, connecting them more directly to Denver. The rough frontier settlement was becoming a proper town, and education had been a driving force in that transformation. Olivia eventually retired from daily teaching, though she remained involved with the library and gave occasional guest lessons. Sarah had taken over as head teacher, and she was excellent at the job, bringing her own innovations and energy. Olivia spent more time writing, documenting the history of the school and library, recording oral histories from longtime residents, creating an archive of the community's growth. Isaac gradually turned over more of the ranch operations to Daniel, though he still rode out most days to check on things and help where needed. He found he enjoyed having more time for other pursuits, for reading with Olivia in the evenings, for playing with grandchildren as they arrived, for simply being present in the life they had built together. Their 20th anniversary arrived, then their 25th. They celebrated surrounded by family and friends, the entire community turning out to honor the couple who had done so much to shape Las Animas into what it had become. Speeches were given, praising Isaac's leadership and Olivia's dedication to education. A scholarship fund was established in their names to help local students attend college. But the moment that meant the most to both of them came at the end of the evening, when they were finally alone in the ranch house that had been their home for so long. They sat on the porch as they had countless times before, watching the sun set over the mountains, the sky painted in impossible colors. "You have any regrets?" Isaac asked quietly. "About coming west, about marrying a rancher instead of someone from your own educated background, about spending your life in a small town instead of a city." Olivia turned to him, her green eyes still clear and bright despite the years. "Not a single one. This life here with you, building something meaningful, it is more than I ever dreamed possible. I came west looking for purpose and found everything. Love, family, community, fulfillment. How could I regret any of that? I worried sometimes, especially in the early years, that you would grow tired of frontier life, that you would miss the sophistication of cities, the cultural opportunities, the intellectual stimulation. I found all of that here," Olivia said firmly. "Maybe not in the same forms as back east, but in ways that mattered more because I helped create them. And I found something I never had in Boston, a true partner, someone who saw me as an equal, who supported my ambitions while sharing his own dreams. You never tried to diminish me or limit me, Isaac. You amplified me, made me more than I could have been alone." Isaac took her hand, running his thumb over her knuckles, over the wedding ring that had rested there for 25 years. "You did the same for me. Made me better, braver, more than I was. Everything good in my life traces back to the day I met you." "Then we were both lucky," Olivia said. "Lucky that robbery happened when it did, that we were both in that store, that we were brave enough to acknowledge what we felt and build on it." "Not luck," Isaac disagreed gently. "Providence, maybe, or fate, but we also made our own luck by being willing to work, to compromise, to always choose each other even when things were difficult." They sat together as darkness fell, as they had done thousands of times before, comfortable in the silence that came from decades of shared life. The land around them held their history in every fence post and tree, every structure and path. Their children carried forward their values and dreams. Their community bore the marks of their influence and dedication. And when they finally went inside, preparing for bed with the easy familiarity of long marriage, Isaac pulled Olivia close one more time. "I love you," he said. "Thank you for saying yes all those years ago, for taking a chance on a cowboy with more heart than prospects. Thank you for seeing beyond a frightened librarian to the person I could become with the right support," Olivia replied. "You taught me that I was stronger than I knew, that asking for help was wisdom, not weakness, that partnership made everything possible. Those lessons changed my life." "We changed each other's lives," Isaac said. "That is what love does. It transforms us into better versions of ourselves." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, grateful and content, having built a legacy that would outlast them both. The school would educate children long after they were gone. The library would open minds to new possibilities for generations. And their own children would carry forward the lesson that had guided their parents' entire marriage. That together, with love and determination and mutual support, anything was possible. Years continued to pass, bringing the inevitable changes of aging. Isaac's hands grew gnarled from decades of ranch work, and he moved more stiffly on cold mornings. Olivia's eyes weakened, requiring glasses for reading, and her once auburn hair turned silver. But they remained active and engaged, Isaac still overseeing the ranch with Daniel, Olivia still working at the library several days a week. They celebrated their 30th anniversary quietly, just family, all 3 children home for the occasion. Daniel and his wife had given them 3 grandchildren. Emily had married a writer she met in New York and was expecting her first child. Even Robert had found his path, training as a doctor and planning to open a practice in Los Animas, bringing modern medical care to the community. As Isaac looked around the table at dinner that night, seeing his children and their spouses, his grandchildren, the legacy he and Olivia had created, he felt a profound sense of peace. This was what mattered. Not wealth or fame or individual achievement, but family and community, and the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived. After dinner, after the children had gone to bed and the house was quiet, Isaac and Olivia took their usual evening walk. They moved slowly now, but still covered their familiar route, down to the creek and back, breathing the clean Colorado air, feeling the land beneath their feet. "What are you thinking?" Olivia asked, noticing Isaac's contemplative expression. "Just that I am grateful," he said simply. "For you, for our life together, for everything we have built. I know I have said it before, probably too many times, but I need you to know how much you mean to me." "I know," Olivia assured him. "Just as you mean everything to me. We have been blessed, Isaac. Not because life has been easy, but because we had each other through all of it." They stood by the creek, listening to the water flowing over rocks, the eternal sound that would continue long after they were gone. The moon was rising, nearly full, painting everything in silver light. And in that moment, Isaac felt the circle closing, the story that had begun with violence and fear coming to its proper end in peace and contentment. "When I am gone," he said slowly, ignoring Olivia's protest, "I want you to know that every day with you was a gift. That I never took you for granted, never stopped being amazed that you chose me. And I want you to keep going, keep teaching and learning and sharing your light with the world. Do not let grief stop you from living fully. Isaac, please, we have years yet ahead of us. Maybe, but maybe not. We are both getting older, and I need to say these things while I can." Isaac turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Promise me you will keep living, keep making a difference. The work you do matters too much for it to end when I am no longer here to help." Tears streamed down Olivia's face. "Only if you promise the same. If I go first, you will not just close yourself off on this ranch. You will stay engaged, stay involved with the family and community." "I promise," Isaac said. "But I hope we have many more years together before either of us has to keep that promise." As it happened, they had another 10 years. 10 years of watching grandchildren grow, of seeing the community continue to thrive, of sitting together on the porch most evenings watching the sunset. They grew frailer but remained sharp-minded, still reading together, still discussing ideas and current events, still deeply in love. When Isaac finally passed, peacefully in his sleep at age 72, Olivia grieved deeply but did not break. She kept her promise, continuing her work at the library, staying active in the community, being present for her children and grandchildren. The hole Isaac left in her life could never be filled, but she honored his memory by living fully, by continuing to teach and learn and grow. She lived another 5 years after Isaac, seeing the dawn of the 20th century, witnessing automobiles arrive in Los Animas, watching the frontier town transform into something modern and permanent. And when she passed, surrounded by family, her last words were about Isaac and the library and the life they had built together. At her funeral, the entire community turned out, 3 generations who had been touched by her dedication to education. Daniel gave the eulogy, speaking about his parents' partnership, about how they had transformed a rough frontier settlement into a place where knowledge and learning were valued. He talked about the lessons they had taught, not just in school but through their example. That kindness mattered, that education changed lives, that love and partnership could overcome any obstacle. But the moment that captured their story best came from Sarah, now in her 60s, and still serving as head teacher at the school Olivia had founded. She stood before the assembled crowd and spoke simply, her voice thick with emotion. Olivia Gardner Warner once told me that her husband taught her the greatest lesson of her life. He taught her that she was not alone, that partnership and support could make the impossible possible. And then she spent the rest of her life teaching that lesson to everyone she met. We are all better, stronger, more than we would have been, because Olivia showed us what it meant to work together, to lift each other up, to build something lasting. She and Isaac created a legacy that will live on in every child who learns to read in that school, in every person who checks out a book from that library, in every life touched by the power of education. They taught us the greatest lesson, that together we can change the world. The school and library continued, just as Isaac and Olivia had hoped. Their children and grandchildren carried forward their values, contributing to the community in their own ways. The scholarship fund bearing their names sent dozens of students to college over the decades. And the barn where it all started remained standing, eventually converted into a museum documenting the history of education in Los Animas, with a special room dedicated to the cowboy and the librarian who had started it all. Their story became local legend, passed down through generations, embellished and romanticized but never losing the essential truth at its core, that two people who should have been unlikely partners found each other at just the right moment and built something extraordinary together. They proved that love could flourish even in harsh conditions, that education mattered even on the frontier, that partnership and mutual support could overcome any challenge. And though they were gone, their influence remained, woven into the fabric of the community they had helped create, carried forward in the lives they had touched, immortalized in the institutions they had built. The greatest lesson they taught was not found in books or formal instruction, but in the example of their lives, that with love, determination, and someone to share the burden, anything was possible. The land they had loved continued to roll out toward distant mountains, the Arkansas River still flowing through the valley, the sun still rising and setting over Colorado in shades of gold and amber. And if sometimes, in the quiet of evening, people thought they saw two figures walking hand in hand down by the creek, or sitting together on the porch of the old ranch house, well, perhaps it was just shadows and memory. Or perhaps it was something more, some echo of a love story that had been so powerful it left its mark on the very landscape where it unfolded. Either way, the legacy of Isaac Warner and Olivia Gardner Warner lived on, a testament to what two people could accomplish together, to the transformative power of partnership, and to the enduring truth that the greatest lessons are often taught not through words but through lives lived with purpose, dedication, and unwavering love. They had come together by chance in a moment of violence and fear, and from that unlikely beginning had built something beautiful and lasting, proving that even on the rough frontier, love and learning could take root and flourish, changing not just individual lives but an entire community for generations to come.